God has a soul and therefore a body composed of atoms. The question of God's nature, especially regarding his physicality or spirituality, has been debated for millennia. Many philosophical and theological traditions claim God is an immaterial, bodiless spirit. However, a careful examination of the Bible reveals a different reality. God is a corporeal spirit who has a soul, and therefore a body composed of atoms. This understanding harmonizes the biblical language describing God's emotions, personhood, and physical presence with the notion that God is a living, embodied being made of divine atoms that are eternal and incorruptible. The soul is the natural physical body. The Bible equates the soul with the living body, making the words soul and body synonymous expressions. A key passage illustrating this is 1 Corinthians 15, verse 44 to 47. It is sown a body of the soul. It is raised a body of the spirit. If there is a body of the soul, there is also of the spirit. Thus also it is written, the first man Adam became a living soul, the last Adam a life-giving spirit. Howbeit, not first is the body of the spirit, but that of the soul. Afterwards, that of the spirit. The first man is of the ground, earthy. The second man is of heaven. From this passage, it is clear that the soul is the natural body, the physical body animated by breath. The body of the soul is the mortal, earthly body, while the body of the spirit is the immortal, heavenly body. Both are bodies, both made of atoms, but the former is mortal and corruptible, the latter divine and incorruptible. The equivalence of soul and body as expressions emphasizes the corporeal nature of living beings. Mortal souls in humans and animals. The soul of humans and animals is mortal, subject to decay and death. This is affirmed in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 19. For the fate of humans and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. This verse shows that the nephesh, the soul as the living body, is mortal in all earthly creatures. Humans and animals alike have souls that perish and return to atoms, reflecting the natural physical reality of life. Understanding God's nature, an immortal body composed of divine atoms. Unlike humans and animals, God's body is immortal and unchanging, composed of divine atoms that are not subject to decay or corruption. These atoms form the foundation of God's eternal and incorruptible nature. The Bible affirms this immutability of God's being in many passages. 1 Timothy 6:16 says God alone has immortality, indicating his body does not die or decay. Psalm 92 declares, before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting you are God. Romans 1:23 notes that humans exchange the glory of God, who is incorruptible, for mortal images. Malachi 3:6 states, I, Yahweh, do not change. Romans 1 verse 20 teaches that God's invisible qualities, including his eternal power, are understood from his creation, his eternal material presence. 2 Peter 1:4 speaks of becoming partakers of the divine nature, sharing in the incorruptible divine atoms. Isaiah 40 verse 28 proclaims that God's understanding is infinite and his power never fails, attributes impossible without an eternal, incorruptible corporeal form. Thus, God's body is made of divine atoms, real, tangible substance, unlike the corruptible atoms of the material world. These divine atoms give God a body that is eternal, unchanging, and sovereign. God has a soul, and therefore a body composed of atoms. Since the soul, nephesh, refers to the natural living body, the biblical language that describes God as having a soul naturally leads to the conclusion that God has a body composed of atoms. Several verses explicitly mention God speaking of my soul, demonstrating that God's being is not an abstract spirit, but a living corporeal presence. And I shall certainly set my tabernacle in the midst of you, and my soul will not abhor you. Leviticus 26:11, and I will annihilate your high places, and cut off your incense stands, and lay your own carcasses upon the carcasses of your dungy idols, and my soul will simply abhor you. Jehovah is examining the righteous one as well as the wicked one, and anyone loving violence, his soul certainly hates. Psalm 11, 6 things are what Jehovah does hate. Yes, 7 are things detestable to his soul. Proverbs 6, your new moons and your festal seasons my soul has hated. To me they have become a burden. I have become tired of bearing them. Isaiah 1:14. Look, my servant, whom I chose, my beloved, whom my soul approved. I will put my spirit upon him. Matthew 12, verse 18. But my righteous one will live by reason of faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. Hebrews 10. These verses reveal a God whose soul experiences emotions, hatred, approval, delight, weariness. Such emotions are the responses of a living body composed of atoms, not of an abstract, immaterial force. God as a corporeal spirit. God is called spirit, Greek, Hebrew, ruach, in John 4:24. But the biblical meaning of spirit is not immaterial. Instead, spirit is life-giving breath, a corporeal, dynamic force made of divine atoms that animates the living body. The ancient understanding, echoed in biblical language, regards spirit as a real, tangible substance that moves, speaks, and acts. For example, the Holy Spirit descends in bodily form like a dove, Luke 3:22, demonstrating that even the Spirit of God has a material, embodied presence. Thus, God is a corporeal spirit, a living being with a soul and a body composed of divine atoms, fully present in space and time. Conclusion. God is not an abstract, immaterial essence or disembodied mind. The scriptures affirm that God has a soul, the living, feeling, conscious person, and therefore a body composed of atoms. This divine body is immortal, incorruptible, and made of eternal atoms that differ from the mortal atoms composing earthly creatures. God's corporeal nature explains the biblical language describing his emotions, will, and presence. When God speaks of my soul, he reveals his living, embodied self, made of divine atoms, eternal and sovereign. This view brings clarity to the divine nature as presented in the Bible. God is a corporeal spirit, fully embodied and alive in a body composed of real, tangible atoms.